Hello,
Hey,
how you doing?
I'm good.
Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
No problem.
For everybody tuning in, can you give a introduction of yourself?
I am Shorty No Mas. I be 4'11".
No doubt. Thank you so much. Like I said, for everybody tuning in, this is History Lesson, episode 167. For those who may have forgotten, may have never known, can you take us back to where you were born and raised?
I was born in Boston, Massachusetts, and I moved to Philly when I was 11. So I've lived here ever since. And a
T-
little bit in New York, but mainly in Philly.
can you take us back to your teenage years growing up between New York and Philly?
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
So
Boston and Philly.
so I had family there. I moved to Philly. Family started a business, and I kind of got pulled here. Had no choice. I was 11, and went back and forth for family functions. But other than that, just really been here.
Early on, teenage years, what were some of your interests and hobbies?
Ramen. That was it.
Out the gate?
Yeah, right out the gate. 14 on. So that was it. That's all I was really interested in back then.
Early on, what was your creative process, rhyming at such a young age?
So I used to hang out with a bunch of guys, and they used to rap, and we used to go hang out with one of their friends who was a DJ, and like they would be playing break beats and writing rhymes, and I was like, oh, I think I could do this. So then it just stuck. That's who I was, Shorty. Shorty at that point was born, not Shorty No Mas. That was a De La Soul thing, but Shorty was born at that point.
What was the origins at that point behind your name?
Paz from De La Soul.
Well,
I guess.
just Shorty, and then we'll get to Paz.
Oh,
So,
okay. So Shorty was, I just grown up 80s hip hop. Everybody cool had a Shorty name in it in hip hop. So I was little, it worked.
right. At what point did you start taking rhyming seriously?
I would say from the beginning I knew that's what I wanted to do.
So at
Yeah.
14.
Yeah, 14 because I was in ninth grade.
So what was the early music scene like at such a young age? What do you remember seeing as far as hip hop goes?
Well, I'm from Philly, so we were really, DJs were the thing in Philly in the late 80s, early 90s, Freshco, Miz, Jazzy Jeff, so we were really a hip hop culture. Philly's always been like a fly culture, Gucci bags and, so hip hop, I guess being so close to New York was always, really prevalent here and, during that time.
Right. Outside of some of the Philly counterparts, what were some of your musical interests you were into early on?
Um, you mean in terms of what like groups I liked?
Yeah, who were you listening to before you decided to go out on your own and record and get into the industry? Who was some of your earlier influences?
Definitely Native Tongues. Anybody in that, collective. Grand Poobah. J. Rue the Damager was a little bit later, but those are the people who inspired me to write.
So earlier on, were you in a group or was you always solo?
I was always solo. Yeah, always.
Can you
Just
take us back? Go ahead.
just me.
Can you take us back to some of the earlier dues you paid to get your name out there?
Um, I think I was fortunate that I didn't really pay any dues. 14, 15, I did the regular talent show thing. But it was all really local in Philly. Um, so there weren't, it was really, it was relatively easy for me. I didn't pay any dues per se. Um, it was 91 when I met Paz from De La. So I was still young. And then after that, things just, snowballed from there.
Where did you guys meet at?
At a concert in Philadelphia. at the Spectrum. I was with my manager and a publicist who knew him, and the publicist introduced us.
And then from that point, did you spit for him? Did you have
No,
a demo at the time?
nope. He gave me his number. He just was like, hit me up. And I'm thinking, yeah, right. But okay. That week, I was at my uncle's house in New York, and I said, why not? Let me try. So I called him, and he was like, hey, he was like, come out to Long Island. So I was like, okay. I didn't know what I was doing. He was like, oh, get on the LIRR and the Long Island Railroad. Went out there, and it was surreal. Went out there. I mean, like, I'm in a house with, like, Fife was there. We ended up going to a Black Sheep concert that night. I'm not even really old enough, but so it was very surreal in that regard, you know, to be around, you know, people I idolized. So then I just started hanging out in Long Island all the time. And then one day he just was like, you're going to be on the album. And no, I had not spit for him at that point. So I was kind of like, don't you want to hear me rhyme? And he was like, okay, fine, let me hear you rhyme. And I was like, okay. So I rhymed, and he was like, great. And he was like, okay. So that was it.
We're going to come to that point in a minute. Before Meet and Pause, did you have a demo? Were you circulating a demo at all?
Not really. I mean, I had a demo, but I was unprofessionally looking for a deal. You know, it wasn't like the main thing, you know, in my life. I was still in school. So like I said, I would do talent shows. That would be my exposure to maybe some label execs, would be talent shows, but they were all in Philly. I never traveled to do any of them.
So any other labels before Pause were interested in signing you at all? Was there any?
I remember going to New York for some meetings, but I couldn't tell you today who they were.
Right. Did the Roots situation come before De La or after? That was after?
Kind
Okay.
of done, yeah.
Because I think Organics came out in May, I believe, and De La came out September. Is that correct?
I don't know. Don't quote me. So my manager was Richard Nichols, who was the Roots former manager, you know, before he passed. He was my manager. I moved to Long Island to work with De La. And while I was away with De La, he kind of started working with the Roots. So then when I worked from home, I would work, you know, that's when I did the Roots album.
Okay, so De La's came before Roots, or at the same time. Okay, gotcha.
And but around the same time.
Gotcha. So take us back to some of those early conversations with Paz and the group members about the direction of Balloon Mind State and what they wanted you to contribute to the album.
So one thing you have to understand is there were never any real conversations. It was just, Shortie, we're in the studio Tuesday and Wednesday, we need you here. Shortie, we're in the studio Saturday, we need you here. Shortie. So I just did. There was no conversation surrounding it. It was just, we need you to be here, which that kind of resulted in me being on a lot of songs for that album because I was just there just in case. So we're like, oh, Shortie, you know, do this ad lib. Shortie, do this. Shortie, do, you know, but there was never any real conversation. And, you know, I was young and excited to be a part of the process at that point. So you could have told me to jump off the bridge. I would have been like, oh, you know, so.
Right. What was the creative process between you and the group members as far as creating those songs?
Shortie, come here, do this. there it is.
Were you
now with In the Woods, it was, we need you to write a verse, you know, for this song. And then that was pretty much the most prepared I had to be before going to the booth and record.
What were some of your best memories of those recording sessions?
I mean, it was just fun. It was different. I miss being in a studio because you could be in room A and anybody could be in B or C. And, you know, we're at Battery and Electric Lady. And so, you know, Busta might come in and he's recording next door, or Madonna might be down the hall. You know, at that point, it's different. We don't have that anymore with the creative process. You could literally just be walking to the kitchen and run into anyone. And I think a lot of that is unfortunate. I mean, I know larger, huge groups, you know, are still recording that way to an extent, because a lot of people have their own studios. So when you had a studio, like the label had everybody there, so you could see anyone. And I think we lost a lot of the collaborative creative process because, you know, people aren't really in the same atmosphere with everyone.
Right.
So
Being your first time in the studio, what was some of the things you learned working around those guys?
God, I don't know if I really learned anything. I mean, I love the process. I had been in the studio before with Rich, so I was familiar. It's not like I learned any specific technique or, you know, anything like that I can recall.
Best memories overall of creating that album with those guys?
Like I said, it was just fun. I mean, we would be in there. You'd go in and it would be daylight, and I'd fall asleep on a couch somewhere and wake up. It'd be the morning. And I mean, it was all-nighters, you know. So it's just fun times. I mean, you know, everyone, you know, daylight's fun and silly and lots of laughs. And so, you know, that was cool.
At this time, are the labels knocking on your door? Is there a bidding war going on for Shortie?
Not at this time, because we're recording the album, so no one knows who I am. After the album came out, then it was like, wait a minute, who is this girl?
So take us back to some of those moments when people started reaching out, and what was the overall reaction that you got from your peers when that album finally dropped?
So when I was really young, maybe when I was 13, I was working with Grandmaster Flash. And we were supposed to do some type of project, an album together. And I told everyone in school, oh my God, I'm going to be on, you know, this was when Grandmaster Flash was big, right? So it never came out. So everybody called me a liar. So now I'm still in high school when I'm recording Daylight's album. So I learned my lesson. So I didn't tell anybody that I was working with De La Soul, or that I even knew them, because anything could happen and I just didn't want to look like a liar all over again. So I kind of purposely, I'm kind of an introvert, I'm a social introvert, so I kind of cut everyone off during that time because I felt like my real friends would reach out to me, like, where the hell you been? And only one person did that. So it was a great gauge to see. I cut everyone off for months. No one cares. No one calls me. No one's like, where you been? How you been? And then the album comes out, and then the video comes out, and everyone was, oh, hey, how you been? Where you been? And it's like, yeah. So in terms of the attention after that, yeah, it's all a whirlwind. There wasn't really a bidding war, because I was supposed to sign to Chris Lighty's Def Jam Violator, and Chris Lighty at the time was working with De La, so no one really even had a chance to get access to me. Everything was kind of going through Paz from De La, and at that point it just was, he was going to look out for his boy, and I was going to come out on Def Jam Violator.
So at this time, are you completing music on your own? Are you getting ready for a debut album during this time, or are you just kind of going with the motions as far as the De La momentum?
So after the album, De La went on tour, and Daisy Age Productions started to pay for me to go in the studio to start recording individual solo songs. But then we stopped doing that, and then I ended up going out on tour for the second and third leg of the De La Soul Tribe Called Quest tour.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that? Because you were on a tour of a hip-hop fan's dream. Souls of Mischief, I believe, was there. Tribe Called Quest, De La, and the Alcoholics, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
And that was the learning experience. It's easy to write a rhyme and go in the studio and record it. I knew nothing. I was the only girl on tour. And everyone was a gentleman. No, there was no funny business or any illicit, activity. Everyone really looked out for me. It was kind of a benefit being the only girl because I always got my own room. I didn't have to share. A new artist as a younger guy probably would have had to share, a room with somebody, but I didn't. It was cool. I learned about per diems. I made, great relationships. I was super shy. So I was like, but I'm not shy enough that I'm going to pass up an opportunity. So I just mustered up all my confidence and I went out there. Once I got out on stage, it was better. It was really, it was, I think the most impressive thing was seeing a crowd of people knew the lyrics that I wrote. And that was like, oh, wow, you guys know it, so that was exciting.
Is there a moment that stands out on that tour that you'll always remember?
Well, lots. I think the thing that kind of freaked me out the most at this point while we were on tour, Ego Trip video came out. And I remember being in Minneapolis. I think we were, if I'm not mistaken, we were performing at Prince's Club. And well, I think it was that same day. I was walking through before sound check and somebody was like, oh my God, there's Shortie Nomas. And that was the first time that someone had recognized me, and that was odd. So I was like, oh, okay. And then the really odd thing was I was tired that day and I wanted to leave before Tribe finished their performance. So the driver was going to take me back to the hotel. And I remember there was levels to the club and someone touched my arm and was like, oh my God, I touched her. And they started crying. And I was like, that's weird. So it was weird. So that will always stand out for me.
Right. Any intermingling with the other groups, Souls of Mischief, Alcoholics, any memories with those guys?
Oh yeah. And in fact, I just recently so we obviously didn't have cell phones like that back then. God, I feel so old. So we all would take pictures and me and De La's merchandiser, Joe Buck, and we would always, when you got your pictures developed back then, you would get double copies. So we would share pictures. And so I had a lot of pictures that Souls of Mischief didn't have. So just actually, I think last week I was able to send them a bunch of images that they didn't have. They didn't have any images from that tour. So that was cool. So yeah, we all hung out and, there'd be after parties and stuff. So it was fun.
Right. You talked a little bit about recording before going out on the second leg. How much recording is done at this point?
Not a lot, maybe 2 or 3 songs.
Okay.
Pasta's little brother Lucky was producing a lot of that album.
Okay. At what point do we get with the Roots between recording the second leg of the tour? What
No,
point
that had already happened. So right before De La's album came out, I came back to Philly and Rich was like, I'm working with this group. I want you to record on their album. So that was cool. I also, during that time, there was some downtime before De La went out on the road. I ended up going to Germany with the Roots and I performed with them over there.
So you were on the Posse Cut, the session. What was that creative process like going in the studio with all those MCs?
Well, we obviously weren't all there at the same time. It was quick. I don't love that verse for anyone who's listening. I can definitely see my growth as an MC from then to now. Maybe no, I don't think it was out. I think De La was about to come out. So I went and, wrote, recorded. It was quick. And then I think I ended up having to go right back to New York. So I didn't hang out long.
Best memories of touring in Germany with the guys?
Best memory? I mean, perform, work. Nothing stands out that it was like, oh, I remember. It was quick. So
Right.
I was thrown off that it got so dark so late in Germany. I was like, it's 11 o'clock at night and the sun is still up. This is odd. So I was like,
Right.
this is different.
So the Roots debut album does this thing. They Lost third album does this thing. Where do you find yourself at this point?
I find myself with no deal, not really interacting with De La, and I'm back in Philly, and I don't know, I never really knew anything about the industry. So, so many people are like, oh, whatever happened to Shorty No Mas? Shorty No Mas didn't know shit. Shorty No Mas was 16. I didn't know shit about shit. Um, I was just doing what everyone told me to do. Come here, go here, record here, do this, do that. Oh, you're going to sign to Def Jam. Okay, you're not going to sign to Def Jam. And then when someone's holding your hand the whole time and then you don't have a deal anymore, you don't know what to do. Had I known then what I know now, of course, I'd have been in everybody's face. And what I've learned later is there were lots of labels who were interested in me. But I don't even know how to get access to these A&Rs or. So, I mean, do I know now I could have called and said, hey, sure, Mas from De La Soul, and they would have took my call? Yeah, but when you're young, you don't know that, you know what I mean? And I never thought of myself as famous, so I didn't think it's me, So came home back in Philly. I end up actually moving in. So Rich Nichols had like a house for artists. Questlove lived there, Kilo lived there, Jazzy Pie Nasties lived there. So I kind of lived there for a while. I wasn't really in the studio recording. I was really just hanging out with Rich if he had meetings in New York. So I was in a hip hop atmosphere, but I wasn't really doing anything for my career, which I should have been. But hindsight's 2020. I think I was so used to someone telling me what to do. And at that time, no one was telling me what to do. So I didn't do anything, So I lived there for a while. Then I ended up moving to Brooklyn. And I lived with the Beat Miners. Black Moon was hot at the time. The Beat Miners were going to get a label deal. So I moved out there to, I was going to start my album with them. And then with my advance, I was going to get an apartment. Unfortunately, their deal fell through. So then I kind of found myself stuck in limbo in Bushwick. They were the best. Their mom was the best. They, kind of took me in. I was young, I didn't really have anything. Their mom took care of me like a mother. They were always in the studio though. Beat Miners was doing a lot of production. So again, I'm in this hip hop atmosphere. The difference was Mr. Walt and E were like, oh, do this or do that. Then when a lot of people knew I was down with the Beat Miners, a lot of people were reaching out to Mr. Walt to get access to me. Oh, how can I get in touch with Shorty? And then he's like, oh, So that's when I got the Fat Beach track team deal that I put the single out in 1995. That was, me being in New York. And the Tony Touch song, he recorded at D&D. We were always recording at D&D. So I was just there and he asked me if I wanted to be on it. So I did.